This video is going to talk about a major, very important piece of programming here where when you mix data types or variable types. A classic example is when you're working with a variable and you set it equal to, or you initialize it as an integer. And so, remember, an integer cannot be a decimal, so maybe I'll just take the number 9 here. And you start working with it. And so, simple mathematics, actually, I'll go with two variables. I'll go int a is 9 and int b is 2. We'll make it 2. And basic mathematics is quite simple. If I just wanted to create my own little calculator that adds those two, I just go a plus b here. And remember, there's no quotation marks, so I'm not actually printing the 9 or printing the 2. I'm not going to output them. But what I am doing is I'm saying, go fetch these numbers 9 and 2 and add them together for me, and then print me whatever that answer is. So that outcome there is going to give me an 11. So that's not difficult, and that's really basic mathematics. And remember, we can add, subtract, multiply, divide as we would in a calculator. So I can multiply these and run that and show that that's going to give me an answer of 18. I could subtract these, a minus b, and I can get the answer 7. Now the problem is going to come into play when I divide these. Now this could become slightly confusing for some people, as this answer gives me an answer of 4. So we should know that 9 divided by 2 is not 4. 9 divided by 2 is actually 4.5. And so what I've done is I've actually mixed variable types, because remember, 9 divided by 2 is actually a decimal. But I never used a decimal in here. There are no decimals. And so it's very, very crucial that you understand that if your problem has all integers in it, that the memory that's being used is only integer items. So it says you used all integers. It assumes you want an integer answer, and therefore we have a little bit of a problem that we have to handle. Now, in order to handle that, there's a few things that you could do. If I were to make these doubles, or in fact if I were to make either one of them doubles, my answer to these questions that I had just come up with, a plus b. Now let's talk about what I've just done. I have a double, which remember is a decimal, and so even though I set it equal to the number 9, it's important to remember that in memory this is now 9.0. And just to kind of prove this, I'll run this and just output a, and you can see it's 9.0. Well, when I mix these two variable types, I now have a decimal plus an integer. The computer will assume that you want the most accurate data type or a variable type. And so it does 9.0 plus 2. It says, well, that's 11. But the most accurate number you gave me was a double, so I'll assume you want a double answer, and it will give me 11.0. Now, that actually solves the problem when I divide. When I go a divided by b, it says, oh, a is a decimal and you're going to divide by an integer. You want a decimal answer, so this time when I run this, it will give me the 4.5 that I'm actually looking for. So it's important to understand, and I know that a lot of times, especially beginning programmers, make these mistakes where their mathematics is completely off because they use all integers, which is logical. That's exactly what we do as humans, and on a calculator we just type integers. But the mathematics in programming loses accuracy because an integer, a mathematics problem that only involves integers will give you an integer answer and has no memory for the decimal piece. So if you're using all integers, okay, just be warned. Okay, it doesn't mean it's wrong. There are plenty of programs that just use integers, but just be warned, especially when you start to throw in division, because if you end up with decimal solutions, all your decimal is going to get dropped out of memory because there is no room. It's all integers. So key is to remember that if there is a decimal in the math problem, then you'll be fine because it will assume you want a decimal answer. At the same time, remember that if you don't want a decimal answer, so if I were to do, again, a minus b, the answer is going to be 7.0. And some people, that'll bother some people, because 7.0, you're like, I don't want the point 0, it's just 7. Well, remember, you used a double, you used a decimal in this math problem, and therefore it's going to give you a decimal answer. Now, there are ways to do that. It's called casting, and so if you'd like to watch another video on casting, you can force your solution to become an integer again if you want. That's a different topic, though.